Welcome to Noah's story, where everything feels real and something hides deeper. The last road trip, the morning sun stretched wide over the Colorado sky. Painting the highway gold and orange, Nathan Holt gripped the steering wheel with both hands, glancing in the rear-view mirror at his children. Lily had her face pressed against the window, watching the mountains roll by like sleeping giants. Owen had fallen asleep with half-eaten granola bars still in his fist. Susan sat beside Nathan, her feet tucked beneath her on the passenger seat, humming softly to an old song on the radio. She looked peaceful. She looked the way home feels. How far are we from Glenwood Springs? She asked, not lifting her eyes from the landscape. About 40 minutes, Nathan said. Maybe less if traffic stays like this. She smiled. The kids are going to love the hot springs. Owen's going to be terrified of the water and then refuse to get out. Nathan laughed quickly. It was the kind of the Saturday that families remember for years. No deadlines, no meetings, no noise from the outside world, just the four of them moving through the open land together light and free. Nathan had worked himself to exhaustion for months. He managed logistics for a mid-sized shipping company in Denver. The hours had been brutal, and Susan had said more than once that the children were growing faster than he was noticing. So he booked this trip. A long weekend, a cabin near the river, nothing else. The playlist switched to something slower. Lily woke from her half sleep and asked if they could stop for ice cream. Nathan said they would find a place. Susan reached over and squeezed his hand. Then his phone rang. The screen read unknown number. He almost ignored it. He nearly let it die into voicemail, but something made him pick it up. The same quick instinct that makes a person pause at a yellow light instead of pushing through. Nathan Holt. The voice on the other end was flat, professional, stripped of anything human. Yes, who is this? That is not important. What is important is that you are currently on Interstate 17, heading westbound approximately 31 miles east of Glenwood Springs. You are traveling in silver Ford Explorer, license plate Charlie Foxtrot 774 dot. Your wife is in the passenger seat, your daughter is behind her, your son is asleep on the right side. Nathan's hand tightened around the phone. His stomach dropped. Who is this? He asked again, his voice lower now. Susan looked at him. She noticed the change in his face immediately. Nathan, what's wrong? He held up finger. His mouth had gone dry. The voice continued, calm as a recorded message. You have been identified as a person of interest in connection with information your company handled 4 months ago. A decision has been made at a level above what you can appeal. A drone has been authorized. Your location is confirmed. You have approximately 9 minutes. Nathan could not speak. The highway rushed beneath his tires. The mountains looked exactly the same as they had 1 minute ago, but everything was different. I am giving you a choice, the voice said. You can remain in the vehicle with your family, or you can exit the vehicle alone and move away from them. The drone is targeting the signal on your personal device. If you move far enough from them, they survive. If you stay, the strike covers the vehicle. The line went dead. For 3 full seconds, Nathan sat completely still. Susan was already reaching for his arm, asking what happened, asking who called, asking why his face had gone white like ash. Lily had stopped asking about ice cream. Owen straight in the back, Nathan looked at the road ahead. He looked at Susan's hands on his arm. He looked in the rear view mirror at his daughter's eyes, wide and searching, and at his son's small, sleeping face. He said nothing. He pressed his foot gently on the brake, eased the Explorer to the shoulder of the highway, and put it in park. Nathan, what is going on? Susan's voice had shifted into something between concern and fear. He turned to her. He looked at her the way a person looks at something they are memorizing, something they know they are seeing for the last time and refused to rush through. I need you to listen to me, he said. I need you to trust me completely, right now, without questions. Can you do that? She stared at him. You are scaring me. I know. He reached over and held her face in both hands for just a moment. I love you. I love these kids more than I have ever loved anything in my life. Then he opened the door. The voice on the other end, Susan, called his name before his feet even touched the gravel. He didn't stop. Nathan moved quickly from the shoulder of the highway toward the tree line that edged the mountain slope. The pines were thick and dark, and the ground rose sharply once he passed the guardrail. He could hear Susan getting out of the car behind him, could hear the panic rising in her voice, could hear Lily crying out for him. He ran, not from fear, not from instinct. He ran the way a man runs when he has made the only decision that makes sense to him, when every other option has been removed and what remains is simply the question of how much love a person can carry in a single act. His phone was still in his pocket. He understood now that it was the signal, the tracker, the thing they were following. He thought briefly about throwing it into the trees in another direction, but he had no way of knowing if distance from the device was enough, or if they had secondary tracking on the vehicle itself. He could not gamble with Susan and the children. He would not. He kept running. Behind him, back on the highway, Susan stood outside the Explorer with both hands pressed to her mouth. The car and wrapped both arms around her mother's waist. Owen stood on the gravel, barefoot, granola bar still somehow in his hand, looking in the direction his father had disappeared. Susan screamed his name once more, 3 miles away inside a white transit van parked at a rest stop off the interstate. 3 miles away inside a white transit van parked at a rest stop off the interstate, Agent Prescott sat in front of monitor. He was 32 years old, wore a grey fleece jacket, and had eaten a vending machine sandwich for lunch. He had done this work for 4 years and had learned not to think too carefully about the people on the screen. On his monitor, a blue dot moved through the tree cover, separating from the stationary cluster of 3 smaller signals near the shoulder of the road. Prescott pressed his earpiece. Target is mobile. He is moving northeast into the tree cover. Separation confirmed. The voice on the other end, the same calm, flat voice that had spoken to Nathan, responded immediately. Confirmed separation distance. Prescott watched the screen. The gap between the blue dot and the cluster at the roadside widened. Separation is now 300 meters and increasing. Authorized strike on mobile target. Prescott's hand moved to the control panel. He paused for exactly 1 second. In that second, he thought about the color log. He had seen the profile before the operation began. Nathan Holt, 38, no criminal record. The connection to the company information had been indirect. A contractor three levels removed. A document that passed through a server that Nathan's company maintained. Prescott had seen thinner justifications than this, but he had also seen clearer ones. He pressed the button. Deep in the pines, high above the mountain slope, the sound came first, a low mechanical hum that Nathan heard 2 seconds before anything else. He had heard drone sounds before, small, recreational ones in parks, but this was different, heavier, purposeful. He did not stop running. He thought about Owen's granola bar. He thought about the way Lily always insisted on sitting behind Susan because she said the view was better on that side. He thought about Susan humming in the passenger seat, her feet tucked beneath her, peaceful, the way home feels. He ran until the sound was directly above him. Then there was light on the shoulder of the highway. Susan sighed through the trees, a flash orange and white deep in the pines on the mountain slope. The sound followed a moment later, reaching them like a punch through the air. She knew she did not scream this time. She pulled Lily close and turned her face away from the mountain. She held Owen against her side. She stood on the gravel shoulder of that highway between the road and the sky, and she held her children and she breathed. In the white transit van, Prescott watched the blue dot disappear from his monitor. He closed the program. He folded his sandwich wrapper into a small square, tucked it in his jacket pocket, and stared at the blank screen for a long moment before starting the engine. Back on the interstate, cars continued to pass. Trucks rolled by without slowing. The mountains stood exactly where they had always stood. The sky had its color. Susan eventually walked her children back to the Explorer. She buckled Owen in first, down Lily moving on, instinct along. On the automation of the mother's hands, she sat in the driver's seat. She put her hands on the wheel. She did not drive for a long time. The man who chose love over life. 3 weeks passed before Susan could speak about it without her voice breaking. The authorities came within the hour. A state trooper had reported an explosion in the tree cover near a mile marker 114 dot. Investigators found the site. They found what remained. They identified Nathan through dental records and the fragments of his phone. The official report called it an accident, an unexplained device malfunction, the kind of language that answers nothing and closes everything. Susan did not believe the report. She knew what she had seen in Nathan's face before he stepped out of that car. She knew the shape of a goodbye even when no words are spoken. She took the children back to Denver. She moved through the weeks the way people move through deep water, slowly with great effort, always aware of the weight pressing in from every side. Lily stopped talking much. Owen started walking at night and standing in the hallway outside Susan's room, not calling out, just standing there, needing to confirm that someone was still present. Susan left his door open and left the hall light on and told him every morning that she was not going anywhere. She meant it as a survival. She meant it as the only promise she had left to keep. On a Tuesday afternoon, 6 weeks after the highway, Susan sat at the kitchen table after the children had gone to school. She had Nathan's old coffee mug in front of her. She had not used it. She just kept it there. She thought about the 40 minutes he had said remained before they reached Glenwood Springs. She thought about the ice cream Lily had asked for that they'd never stop to get. She thought about the hot springs, the cabin, the river. She thought about all the ordinary things that had existed in the space between that morning's departure and that phone call. How full that space had been. How unaware they were that it was the last of something. She thought about the choice he made, not with confusion. She understood it completely. He looked at his children and made the only calculation that made sense to his heart. He had placed his life on one side and 4 lives on the other, and had moved toward the side that weighed more. She understood it. She also knew that the people who made that call, who authorized that drone, who decided that Nathan Holt's connection to a server his company maintained was sufficient justification for a death sentence on a highway in Colorado. Those people had never sat in a car on a Saturday morning watching a child press her face against a window to look at mountains. They had not seen what Nathan saw every day. They had not understood what it cost to carry the responsibility for people you love, and what a person becomes when protecting that love is the only option remaining. Somewhere out there, people made decisions from behind clean desks and blank monitors. They used words like authorization and target and strike confirmation. They had separated the language of their work from the reality of what the work produced because the distance made it possible to continue. That distance, Susan thought, was the most dangerous thing in the world. Not weapons, not technology. The distance a person creates between themselves and the consequences of their choices. Nathan had no distance. He stood in the full reality of what was happening, and he responded to it with the clearest version of himself. He thought of Susan's hand on his arms. He thought of Owen sleeping with a granola bar. He thought of Lily's question about ice cream, and he opened the door. The earth does not need more weapons or more agencies or more authorization codes. It needs more people who are willing to feel the full weight of what their choices are cost others. It needs more people who are willing to feel the full weight of what their choices cost others. Nathan Holt felt that weight, and he did not flinch from it. That is the kind of courage that never makes headlines. It does not carry a title or a rank or a ceremony. It happens on the shoulder of a highway, in the space between a parked car and a tree line, in the seconds it takes a father to decide what his family's lives are worth. They are worth everything. He knew that, and he proved it. The moral of this story: a man who has nothing to fight. And the moral of this story is, a man who has nothing to fight for is dangerous. But a man who has everything to live for and chooses to surrender his life so that everything he loves may continue, that man carries a truth the world rarely honors. Nathan did not die because he was powerless. He died because he was, in the deepest sense, powerful enough to choose something greater than himself. We do not need to agree with violence to understand what it costs. Every person who dies as Nathan died leaves behind a Susan, a Lily, and Owen. Every strike authorized from a distance leaves a kitchen table with a coffee mug that nobody uses. So it's a suggestion. This is the earth has enough capacity for every person to live without terror. What it lacks is the willingness to prioritize that capacity over pride, over power, and over the satisfaction of the control. Peace is not the weakness. Peace is the most demanding discipline a human being can practice. It asks us to see the family in the car before we see the target. It asks us to measure the cost before we authorize the consequences. We should make this earth peaceful, not for politics, not for recognition, but because somewhere right now a father is driving his children toward a weekend they will never reach. And the only thing standing between them and that weekend is whether the people holding power have truly learned, to feel the weight of what they hold. Nathan felt it, and we should too. Thank you so much.